have a man here, Caius Gracchus, who had an amazing genius and the most ardent application and was a scholar from his very childhood. For you must not imagine, my Brutus, that we have ever yet had a speaker whose language was richer and more copious than his. I really think so, answered Brutus, and he is almost the only author we have among the ancients that I take the trouble to read, and he well deserves it, said I, for the Roman name and literature were great losers by his untimely fate. I wish he had transferred his affection for his brother to his country. How easily, if he had thus prolonged his life, would he have rivaled the glory of his father and grandfather. In eloquence, I scarcely know whether we should yet have had his equal. His language was noble, his sentiments manly and judicious, and his whole manner great and striking. He wanted nothing but the finishing touch, for though his first attempts were as excellent as they were numerous, he did not live to complete them. In short, my Brutus, he, if anyone, should be carefully studied by the Roman youth, for he is able not only to sharpen, but to enrich and ripen their talents. After him appeared Caius Galba, the son of the eloquent Servius, and the son-in-law of Publius Crassus, who was both an eminent speaker and a skillful civilian. He was much commended by our fathers, who respected him for the sake of his, but he had the misfortune to be stopped in his career for being tried by the Mammalian law as a party concerned in the conspiracy to support Jugurtha. Though he exerted all his abilities to defend himself, he was unhappily condemned. His peroration, or as it is often called, his epilogue, is still extant and was so much in repute when we were schoolboys that we used to learn it by heart. He was the first member of the sacerdotal college since the building of Rome who was publicly tried and condemned. 34. As to Publius Scipio, who died in his consulship, he neither spoke much nor often, but he was inferior to no one in purity of language and superior to all in wit and pleasantry. His colleague, Lucius Bestia, who began his tribuneship very successfully, for by a law which he preferred for the purpose, he procured the recall of Popilius, who had been exiled by the influences of Caius Gracchus, was a man of spirit and a tolerable speaker, but he did not finish his consulship equally happy. For in consequence of the invidious law of Mamilius above mentioned, Caius Galba, one of the priests, and the four consular gentlemen, Lucius Bestia, Caius Cato, Spurius Albinus, and that excellent citizen, Lucius Opimius, who killed Gracchus, of which he was acquitted by the people, though he had constantly sided against them, were all condemned by their judges, who were of the Gratian party. Very unlike him in his tribuneship, and indeed in every other part of his life, was the infamous citizen Caius Licinius Nerva, but he was not destitute of eloquence. Nearly at the same time, though indeed he was somewhat older, flourished Caius Fimbria, who was rather rough and abusive and much too warm and hasty, but his application and his great integrity and firmness made him a serviceable speaker in the Senate. He was likewise a tolerable pleader and civilian, and distinguished by the same rigid freedom in the turn of his language as in that of his virtues. When we were boys, we used to think his orations worth reading, though they are now scarcely to be met with. But Caius Sextus Calvinus was equally elegant both in his taste and his language, though unhappy, of a very infirm constitution. When the pain in his feet intermitted, he did not decline the trouble of pleading, but he did not attempt it very often. His fellow citizens, therefore, made use of his advice whenever they had occasion for it, but of his patronage only when his health permitted. Contemporary with these, my good friend, was your namesake, Marcus Brutus, the disgrace of your noble family, who, though he bore that honorable name, and had the best of men and an eminent civilian for his father. confined his practice to accusations, as Lycurgus is said to have done at Athens. He never sued for any of our magistracies, but was a severe and troublesome prosecutor, so that we easily see that in him the natural goodness of the stock was corrupted by the vicious inclinations of the man. At the same time lived Lucius Celsinus, a man of plebeian rank and a professed accuser. Like the former, I myself heard him in his old age when he endeavored by the Aquilian law to subject Lucius Sabellus to a fine for a breach of justice. But I should not have taken any notice of such a law-born wretch if I had not thought that no person I ever heard could give a more suspicious turn to the cause of the defendant or exaggerate it to a higher degree of criminality. All right.